In this lecture, we begin a mini-series on the topic of study skills. And so when it comes to preparing for your IAPP exam, whichever one that may be, there is a common set of skills that you can start developing to help you pass the exam. And so in this lecture, I want to introduce Bloom's taxonomy. If you look through any of the IAPP body of knowledges, you're likely to see this image on one of the introductory pages. And understanding what Bloom's taxonomy is and how IAPP uses this in developing their curriculum and their exam questions is really important. So we're going to introduce that concept, and then we're going to look at the four main levels of Bloom's taxonomy that IAPP tests. And then for each of those four levels, I'm going to provide you with some actionable items, some things that you can start doing, some activities that you can engage in, that are going to help you really master this content and again, prepare for the exam. And I'm referring to that here as practice level progression. How can you progress through the four levels of the taxonomy that IAPP is going to test you on? And so here on the right-hand side, I have an image of Bloom's taxonomy. If you enter into your search engine of choice, Bloom's taxonomy or Bloom's revised taxonomy, you will see a bunch of different pyramids that all look more or less the same. And what Bloom's taxonomy is it's a hierarchical framework for categorizing educational goals and cognitive processes. And really, this is a tool that educators, teachers, professors use when they're preparing a curriculum for a course. And so in my previous life as a university instructor, I literally had printed out and laminated a copy of Bloom's taxonomy, and I stuck it to the wall right behind my computer monitor. That's how often I was referencing this taxonomy. And the idea here is that as you are planning different items in your syllabus, and most importantly, as you're preparing activities for students, you're writing out the student learning objectives. And the objectives go like this. By the end of this course, or by the end of this class, or even by the end of this activity, students will be able to, and then that verb that comes after to is going to be either remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, or create. And so for the example, by the end of this lesson, students will be able to understand the foundational concepts of artificial intelligence in order to properly govern AI in their organization. So that's one example of a student learning objective. Now, this applies to IAPP because when it comes to creating their body of knowledge, and for our purposes here, more importantly, how they create their questions, they are essentially creating a student learning objective or student testing objective using the bottom four levels or tiers of Bloom's taxonomy here. And these are remember, understand, apply, and analyze. And I mentioned just a moment ago in the previous slide that the four tiers that IAPP is testing you on are remember, understand, apply, and analyze. Well, what exactly does that mean? For the remember tier, the primary activities, the functions, what it is that you're doing, is you're able to recall facts and concepts. For understand, this means that you're able to explain ideas and concepts. So you recall, okay, I know what supervised learning is, and then you can explain that to someone else that perhaps does not know what supervised learning is. Similarly, you're able to apply those ideas, those facts and concepts in new ways to real-world scenarios. And you're able to analyze. So you're given a scenario, you need to be able to read that scenario, understand all of the ideas, the facts, the concepts in that scenario, and then connect what you have learned with what you are looking at. Connecting the past, your past experience or your past knowledge, your learning, your education, connecting that with the present, and then doing something with that, making a determination. And so while memorizing all of the detail in this course will help you on the exam, solely being able to recall and explain ideas is not quite there. You haven't quite progressed up the hierarchy of Bloom's taxonomy. You need to take that a couple steps further, being able to apply that knowledge and analyze novel situations or scenarios. And so how can you do that? How can you build or flex, stretch those intellectual muscles so that you can do well on the exam? Well, what I'm going to do for the remainder of this lecture is we're going to go through each of those 4 stages, and I'm going to provide you with some practical tips, some actionable activities that you can start doing throughout this course on your own to build those intellectual muscles. So for the remember stage, the number one tool that I recommend for everyone is flashcards. And through the process of creating your own flashcards and then committing that information, again, those facts, those ideas, those concepts to memory, you are laying that foundation. Again, Bloom's taxonomy, this is a pyramid, and the foundational level is remembering. You can't apply and analyze concepts that you don't know, that you don't understand, you haven't encountered before. Similarly, if you've encountered or you've read about something, but you've completely forgotten it, then that's of no use to you. And in the next lecture following this one, I'm going to provide you with some tips on how you can create and maintain a flashcard system to help you with this remembering stage. 2 systems or devices, techniques that can help you remember flashcards, that can help you with this brute memorization, are mnemonic devices, and I provide a number of mnemonic devices throughout the course. And finally, a spaced repetition system or spaced repetition software. In the next lecture, when I talk about how you get something from short-term to long-term memory, I'm going to share with you the SRS that I use and I've been using for well over a decade that has helped me prepare for and pass all of the IAPP exams that I've taken, the CISSP, and also helped me prepare for my qualifying exams for my PhD. So we're going to come back to this, but in short, SRS, this is a system, this is an app in my case, it's a mobile app that uses scheduled review to make learning and memorizing details more efficient. So we'll come back to this soon. After the remembering stage, we have the understanding stage. This is the next tier up. One thing you can do, again, to help you build this muscle memory, to help you flex these intellectual muscles, is to take the concepts that you have learned, that you have committed to memory, and explain them in your own words. You can talk to yourself. You can explain to a friend, to a family member. They say that one of the best ways to learn something is to teach something. And what we're doing when we're teaching is we are explaining concepts in our own words. If you're preparing for the exam with a group of friends, then perhaps you could assign responsibility for 5 different terms. So you each are assigned one term, you prepare an explanation or a mini lesson plan on that term, and you teach it to your 4 colleagues. Through explaining these different concepts in our own terms, we are often paraphrasing information. You can also create summaries of the material that you have learned. For example, at the end of every one of my lectures, without referring to any of your notes, just try and summarize what you learned. What are the main vocabulary terms that we went over? How would you define each of those terms? How are they connected to each other, or how are they connected to concepts that you've learned in previous lectures? And finally, draw comparisons between ideas. So compare and contrast. Early in the course, in Domain 1, we're going to talk about the different methodologies for training artificial intelligence. And so think about, how do supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning, how do those 3 different terms compare and contrast? What's similar, what's different? And again, to the best extent possible, try and do this without referencing your notes. So remember, before you get to explaining, you have committed these concepts to memory. Once you have committed them to memory, now you're going to explain. The 3rd tier up is the application stage. Some activities that you can engage in to help you build this application muscle include solving real-world problems using the concepts that you've learned, implementing step-by-step problem-solving methods, practice applying new knowledge in new situations, and use alternative approaches to solve problems. Now, one thing that you can do to help you with this is not only discussing problems and current events with your friends and colleagues, but you can work through the 400 scenario-based questions that I've created in this course. So the vast majority of these are novel situations that are built around one or multiple facts, ideas, or concepts that are part of the body of knowledge. And for each of those, you have a scenario. You're going to have to read the scenario, make some connections with concepts and facts and terminology and so forth that you learn, and then solve a problem. So those practice questions, these are a tool for you to really use in order to help you, again, to flex these muscles, to build this memory so that you can succeed on the exam. The final tier that you need to master for this exam is the analysis stage. This is where you break down complex ideas into different components. You are drawing connections between different concepts. You are making a decision or determination and then justifying that determination with evidence. And you're also being a bit skeptical with the different types of scenarios that you may encounter. So what are some assumptions, and why or why not are those assumptions correct? And again, the practice questions that I've included with the course, this is going to be a really helpful tool for you to help build these analysis skills. In this lecture, we have gone over Bloom's taxonomy. Remember that Bloom's taxonomy is a hierarchical framework for categorizing educational goals and cognitive processes. For the exam, there are 4 stages that you need to master. They are remember, understand, apply, and analyze. For the remember stage, useful activities that you should engage in throughout your preparation include creating flashcards, using those flashcards to memorize the key concepts and terminology, mnemonic devices, which I have throughout the course included, and also perhaps utilizing a spaced repetition system or spaced repetition software. For understanding, you can explain concepts in your own words, paraphrase information, create summaries of learned material, and compare and contrast ideas. For the application stage, you want to solve real-world problems using learned concepts, implement step-by-step problem-solving methods, practice applying knowledge in new situations, and use alternative approaches to solve problems. Finally, for analysis, you want to break down complex ideas into components, draw connections between different concepts, justify decisions with evidence, and be skeptical, question assumptions and findings. For both of these stages, completing the 400 practice questions I've included with the course will help you build these skills.